Lindsay's birthday banquet was a grand affair. Relatives and friends from both families were present. She stood on stage giving a speech, her voice choking with emotion several times. Standing beside her, Owen gazed at her tenderly, reaching out to gently wipe away her tears as a gesture of comfort. No matter how one looked at it, this didn't seem like an ordinary birthday party. Instead, it looked more like a wedding ceremony, with the bride and groom delivering their vows. What's going on? Isn't today supposed to be your engagement with Owen? Why is he celebrating your sister's birthday instead? My best friend Monica burst into my dance studio the moment she saw the livestream. And this hotel, this decor, isn't this the one you and I picked out together? I had just finished practice and was adjusting my movements in front of the mirror. Without turning around, I responded calmly, the engagement was cancelled. What? Why? Monica was in shock. But after noticing the cold indifference in my eyes, she quickly pieced things together. It's because of your sister, isn't it? That's right. 3 months ago, Lindsay returned from studying abroad. She arrived just in time to witness Owen and me planning our engagement. I had chosen the venue, set the date, and arranged every detail meticulously. But just a week ago, Lindsay mentioned that her birthday was coming up. She wanted to host a grand birthday party as her first big gathering since returning, inviting all her old friends. She hadn't celebrated her birthday at home in 6 years. Of course, my parents were more than happy to oblige. They even insisted on making it as extravagant as possible. But there's only a week left before my birthday. There's no way we'll have enough time to set everything up. Lindsay pouted. My parents exchanged a thoughtful glance, clearly considering the time constraint. Then what should we do? Didn't Regina already book a hotel? I saw the decoration plans the hotel sent her, and I love them. Mom, Dad, why don't we just use Regina's venue? Lindsay feigned contemplation for a moment before suddenly making this suggestion, her eyes lighting up. At first, my parents hesitated. After all, everything about that hotel, the setup, the decor, had been arranged for my engagement to Owen. But Lindsay, as always, was skilled at getting her way. She clung to each of their arms and whined. It's just a birthday party. It won't affect anything. Besides, using Regina's venue will save us time and effort, right? Lindsay had always been their favorite. Even the slightest sign of displeasure from her was enough to make them worry. And now, hearing her speak as if she was being considerate of their workload for the first time, they were overwhelmed with relief and joy. They never even stopped to think that I had spent months meticulously planning every detail. So, in the end, they agreed. Monica was left utterly speechless after hearing my story. Are you kidding me? She hijacked your engagement venue? It's not like she's dying next year. She was furious on my behalf. And what about Owen? He just went along with it? Owen. The thought of him made me pause for a moment. Monica looked at me, suspicion in her eyes. This was supposed to be your engagement. Is Lindsay's birthday really more important than that? Didn't you see for yourself? Monica fell silent again. This time, I couldn't tell if her gaze was filled with pity or concern. I had already anticipated this outcome. The good thing was, I had already cried enough. Now, I could even manage a reassuring smile for Monica. But my smile only seemed to unsettle her more. It's okay, it's okay. He'll definitely make it up to you with an even better engagement in the future. She tried to comfort me, albeit clumsily. In the past, I might have believed her. But at this moment, all I could think was, there won't be a future for Owen and me. Monica didn't know this. But I did. Lindsay was like the beloved heroine of a novel. Everyone always put her first. Owen was no exception. He knew how much effort I had put into this. He knew how much I had been looking forward to it. But just because Lindsay asked, he, along with my parents, persuaded me to give in. I had argued. I had fought back. But Owen simply said, we can get engaged anytime, but her birthday only comes once a year. She's been away for the past 5 years. Can't we at least give her a proper birthday now that she's home? It wasn't that I couldn't. But why did it have to be on the day of our engagement? Why did it have to be my chosen venue? Why? I had countless whys in my heart. But they all stopped the moment I saw the impatience in Owen's furrowed brows. Owen had always treated Lindsay differently. He never refused her anything. Tutoring her in high school, helping her after school, keeping her company on weekends. I had always thought that no matter how much he indulged Lindsay, he would still know where to draw the line. I never expected that with just one request, he would still say yes. I stayed in the dance studio until the lights went out before finally leaving. But Lindsay's birthday banquet wasn't over yet. By the time I arrived at the venue, there were still plenty of guests. Lindsay was mingling among them, champagne in hand, chatting and laughing. I recognized some of them, several were even our high school classmates. But compared to how close they were with Owen and Lindsay, I was merely an acquaintance. Lindsay, you've gotten even prettier over the years. Oh, stop it, Rock. I'm serious. Just look at you and Owen, you two make such a perfect couple. Rock teased. Lindsay responded with a shy smile. Just then, Owen walked over. What are you guys talking about? Perfect timing. They were just saying how great you and I look together. Lindsay linked her arm with his, smiling sweetly. Rock waved his hand dismissively. I'm not the only one who thinks so. When you were giving your speech earlier, several people around me were saying the same thing. That you two are a perfect match. Rock mimicked their tone, making the surrounding guests burst into laughter. Lindsay covered her mouth, giggling. Owen's smile wasn't as exaggerated, but the warmth in his eyes was unmistakable. I took in the scene. To say I wasn't hurt would be a lie. But Regina's here. Someone suddenly called out. Owen and the others immediately turned toward me. I snapped out of my thoughts and met Owen's gaze. He hadn't expected me to show up. The softness in his expression vanished instantly, replaced by surprise. Instinctively, he pulled his arm away from Lindsay's and walked toward me. Why are you here? The way he asked, it was as if I shouldn't have come at all. I looked at him. He seemed to realize his words were inappropriate and quickly took my hand, speaking gently. I mean, why didn't you call me to pick you up? I never thought there'd come a day when Owen would say something so perfunctory to me. If he truly cared, he wouldn't need to make up for it after the fact. I didn't want to trouble you. Taking a cab was easier. Owen chuckled. How would it be trouble? It's just picking you up. Forget it. He didn't even notice the distance in my tone. I stopped responding. Lindsay walked over. You're here. Unlike Owen's momentary awkwardness, Lindsay remained perfectly composed. She gracefully lifted her dress as she approached. And that's when I noticed. She was wearing the gown I had prepared for my engagement banquet's toast. She saw me looking and smiled. Do you like my dress, Regina? In her eyes, I saw the unmistakable glint of provocation and pride. Before I could respond, Owen quickly explained. Lindsay's gown wasn't ready in time, so we don't misunderstand. There was no misunderstanding. I wouldn't need that dress anymore, anyway. I smiled. It looks great. Suits you well. I didn't have time to get you a birthday present, so consider this my gift to you. Lindsay froze for a moment. She hadn't expected me to go along with it. Owen didn't notice. He even sighed in relief. I'll get you an even better one next time, Regina. I didn't take it seriously. But Lindsay's expression subtly changed. I pulled my hand away from Owen's grip. With little enthusiasm, I said, I'm going to see my parents first. I'll go with you. My parents were in the living room, flipping through photos from tonight. Oh, these turned out so well. Yeah, this one's my favorite. My mom pointed to a group photo from earlier in the evening. There were 4 people in it, Owen, Lindsay, and my parents. She stared at it for a long moment, a satisfied smile appearing on her face. Look at Lindsay and Owen, don't they make a perfect pair? Hearing this, my dad squinted and studied the photo. They do look good together, but Owen is with Regina. So what? If Lindsay hadn't gone abroad back then, would Regina have even stood a chance? Owen was always meant for Lindsay, my mom declared. She shot my dad a look, as if blaming him for stating the obvious. With no room to argue, he could only nod in agreement. Still looking at the photo, my mom couldn't help but sigh. If only Owen and Lindsay were together. My steps faltered at those words. Owen was walking behind me, and every single word landed right in his ears. His expression darkened. He instinctively glanced at me before quickly raising his voice, breaking the awkward silence. "Regina's here." Startled, my parents turned around. Why are you here?" They must have realized that I had heard everything. Their faces turned awkward, unsure of how to react. "Isn't it Lindsay's birthday today?" "I came back to see her," I said. My mother responded hesitantly, avoiding my gaze. And just like that, the conversation ended. We had never been close, and even if we were in the same room, we rarely had much to say. Especially after what I just overheard tonight. The best choice now was to leave. I didn't linger, simply said a few words, and turned to go. Before I could step away, Owen grabbed my hand. "I'll go with you." He must have felt just as uncomfortable. Holding onto my hand, he was about to leave with me when Lindsay's voice called out from behind. "You're leaving, Owen?" "Yes. But I haven't cut the cake yet." Lindsay frowned slightly, her voice tinged with disappointment. "You ordered this cake yourself. Won't you stay and cut it with me?" Owen's grip on my hand stiffened. "Regina." Sensing his dilemma, Lindsay finally turned to me. "You just got here too. Why don't you stay and have some cake before you go?" "No, thanks. I'm watching my weight. You guys enjoy." By now, it was clear to me what Owen really wanted. I made up an excuse about being too tired from rehearsals and left. Before stepping outside, I glanced back one last time. I saw a crowd gathered around the table on the lawn. Owen and Lindsay stood in the center, cutting the enormous cake together, surrounded by smiling faces. The scene wasn't exactly familiar. But it wasn't foreign either. My mother had said something tonight that was undeniably true. If Lindsay hadn't gone abroad, there would have been no place for me and Owen. I loved Owen. But my mother wanted Owen to love Lindsay. Because she wanted Lindsay to have everything good in the world. I remembered when I was little, my mother bought 2 beautiful princess dresses. Logically, we should have gotten one each. But Lindsay wanted both. She clutched them tightly, refusing to let go, wailing at the top of her lungs. "No. They're both mine. I want them both." Heart aching for her, my mother scooped her up from the floor. All right. They're both Lindsay's." Lindsay was instantly pacified, throwing her arms around Mom's neck. "Mommy, I love you the most. Mommy loves Lindsay the most too. Mommy wants to give Lindsay all the best things in the world." It was a small incident. But I never forgot it. Growing up, my mother was always worried Lindsay wouldn't be taken care of. She even made me delay starting school for a year. "You have to take good care of your sister, understand?" She repeated this phrase from kindergarten to high school. Until Owen appeared. Then it became, "Lindsay, I'll leave him in your hands." Owen was the golden boy everyone admired. Handsome, intelligent, from a great family. As my mother put it, when you meet someone outstanding, you have to hold on to them tightly. Because Owen was outstanding, she had to secure him for Lindsay. After high school, when she found out which university Owen had applied to, she changed both mine and Lindsay's applications to match his. She changed mine so I could continue looking after Lindsay. She changed Lindsay's because she wanted her to be with Owen. But Lindsay got rejected. Unwilling to attend any other school, she decided to retake the exam. Then, the following year, she suddenly wanted to study abroad. At first, my parents disagreed. But Lindsay used the same old tricks, and eventually, they gave in. They pulled every string they could to send her overseas. I went to college alone. At first, my mother sighed over it. "Oh well, I guess Lindsay and Owen just aren't meant to be." But when she saw Owen and me together, her expression turned complicated. As if I had stolen something meant for Lindsay. Owen returned home in the middle of the night. I was still awake, reading research papers on my tablet. When he opened the door and saw me up, he paused briefly. "You're back?" I turned off the screen and looked at him. Owen nodded, as if wanting to say something. I cut him off. "Go take a shower first. Keep it quiet, I'm going to sleep soon." After showering, Owen climbed into bed. Under the blanket, his warm arm wrapped around my waist. His voice, dampened by lingering steam, carried a soft, almost vulnerable tone. Regina. I could hear the hesitation in his words and remained silent, waiting. Don't take what happened tonight to heart. After a moment, he finally spoke. What do you mean? I asked calmly. Did he mean our engagement party being turned into Lindsay's birthday celebration? Or Lindsay wearing my engagement dress? Or how he remembered Lindsay's party but forgot to pick me up from the dance studio? Or was he referring to what my parents said? If it's about the engagement being postponed for the birthday party, you've already explained that. I reminded him. Owen opened his mouth but hesitated. He must have sensed my unusual calmness. If I had gotten angry, protested, or even cried, he would have known what to do. But now, I simply accepted everything with indifference. This was what he wanted. Yet somehow, it made him feel defeated and uneasy. I know you're upset, Regina. I promise you, I'll give you an even grander wedding. Nothing will compare to it. Owen finally spoke, his arms tightening around me. He waited, hoping for a response. Good night. Perhaps out of guilt, Owen started sending flowers to the academy the next day. People who didn't know the truth gossiped and teased. Only Monica remained unimpressed. If anything, she seemed angrier at Owen than I was. Her reaction amused me. Just then, the dean's assistant came over with some paperwork. Monica glanced at it. What's that? An application form. Application? For what? The academy has an overseas study program, and I told the dean I wanted to apply. Monica was stunned. She snatched the form from my hands. That's a 3-year program. Does Owen know? He'll find out soon enough. I never intended to hide my plans for further studies from Owen. Now that my application form had arrived, it was the perfect time to talk to him about it. I drove straight to Owen's company. The receptionist knew who I was and let me take the executive elevator without any questions. As soon as I stepped out, I heard Lindsay's voice. Wow. The view from here is amazing. Lindsay was leaning against the massive floor-to-ceiling windows in Owen's office, marveling at the panoramic view of the city's central district. Owen stood behind her, his smile indulgent and full of affection. Are you hiring? I can do anything, Lindsay turned to ask him. Owen chuckled. I'm not short on employees, but I do need an assistant. Really? What do you think about me? The two of them interacted as if no one else was there. Owen's secretary rolled her eyes, but suddenly caught sight of me. Miss Regina. As soon as she spoke, Owen and Lindsay finally noticed my presence. For a fleeting moment, their smiles faltered. Lindsay stepped past Owen. You're here. I was bored today, so Owen brought me to his office for a tour. Before I could say anything, Lindsay had already explained herself. Owen walked over and took my hand, asking why I hadn't let him know in advance that I was coming. Sorry, I'll make sure to text you next time. I never had to before. Owen frowned slightly, as if about to say something. Lindsay suddenly leaned in. Owen, I'm a little hungry. She interrupted whatever he was about to say. Owen glanced at me. You haven't eaten yet, have you? Let's eat together. Owen drove out of the underground parking garage. As soon as the car stopped, Lindsay reached for the passenger side door. Oh, force of habit. Regina, you go first. She playfully stuck out her tongue at me, looking completely innocent. Throughout the meal, Lindsay chattered nonstop, mostly directing her words at Owen. Owen listened attentively, occasionally reaching out to place food on my plate. I want some too. Lindsay suddenly spoke up. You treat Regina so well. I wish I could find a boyfriend as amazing as you. My chopsticks paused midair. Owen didn't seem to catch the underlying meaning and merely chuckled. Just eat your food, he said, placing some food on her plate as well. Suddenly, I lost my appetite. I set my chopsticks down and asked Owen, are you free this afternoon? I need to talk to you. What's it about? Owen turned his head toward me, then remembered something. I have a meeting later. Fine. We'd talk in the evening then. But that evening, Owen told me he had to leave for a business trip, one that would last a week. I wouldn't have minded the trip itself. But he was bringing Lindsay with him. Owen booked an evening flight. By the time they landed, it was already 11 p.m. Right before I went to sleep, I happened to scroll through Lindsay's Instagram. First day as the boss's assistant, traveling for work. The caption was accompanied by a picture of a hotel's floor-to-ceiling window. The location tag matched the city where Owen had told me he was going. And in the reflection of the glass, I could faintly make out two silhouettes. My mother had even liked the post. She left a comment, "Good luck, sweetheart." A surge of anger shot straight through me. I immediately called Owen. "Owen. Hee, Regina, it's me." Lindsay's voice oozed through the phone, sticky and insidious like a venomous snake. A chill ran down my spine. "Where's Owen?" "He's in the shower." "Do you need to tell him something?" "I can pass along the message for you." Her voice was light-hearted, innocent even. But to me, it was like a fuse waiting to be lit. I forced myself to stay calm. "No need. Give him the phone." "Why are you being so defensive?" "Owen tells me everything about you too." Lindsay's voice was filled with mock grievance. Enough. I had truly had enough of her fake innocence. "Give him the phone." I couldn't help but raise my voice. For a moment, there was silence. Then, Owen's voice finally came through. "What's wrong? You took Lindsay on your trip?" I tried to suppress my anger. There was a brief pause before he explained, "Lindsay wanted to go somewhere, and since I was already coming here for work." A pathetic excuse. My temples throbbed. I thought I had enough patience. But there was always something that tested my limits. Owen noticed my silence and hesitated. "Regina. If I asked you to send Lindsay back right now, would you do it?" "What?" He didn't seem to understand. "I don't want you." "Lindsay? Where are you going?" Before I could finish my sentence, Owen's voice abruptly rose in alarm. I could hear him setting his phone down. In the background, footsteps and rustling sounds followed. Lindsay's voice, soft and pitiful, drifted through the line. "Regina must have misunderstood something. I'll just go explore by myself." Owen's voice grew louder as he called after her. A few seconds later, he came back to the phone. "She ran off. She's unfamiliar with this place, and it's already late. I need to find her first, we'll talk later." Then, the call disconnected. I never got another call from Owen that night. But Lindsay's Instagram was active again. One day, she posted 5 different updates, each in a different place. In every picture, Owen's figure appeared, whether in the background or reflected in glass. I thought about my own relationship with Owen. After years of dating, we only ever went to the same few places. Yet in just a few days, he had taken Lindsay to so many. Love and indifference, it couldn't have been clearer. Owen was supposed to return in a week. He came back on the 10th day. By then, my application had been approved. I would be leaving in 2 weeks. I packed my things for my studies abroad. Just as I dragged my suitcase to the door, I saw Owen and Lindsay stepping out of his car, laughing together. They were still basking in the joy of their trip, smiles lingering on their faces. Then, Owen lifted his eyes and saw me. His smile instantly disappeared. He hurried toward me. "Where are you going?" "I'm moving into my school dorm." I had some preparations to make before leaving the country. Before I could explain, Lindsay spoke up first. "Are you still mad? Is that why you're moving out?" She looked at me with innocent, furrowed brows. Owen seemed to consider this possibility as well. His gaze darkened. "You didn't know I was coming back today?" His tone and expression suddenly turned colder, so different from how he had just been with Lindsay. I caught the impatience in his voice. I met his gaze head-on. "I didn't know. You never told me." Owen's face stiffened. It was only now that he seemed to remember, our last conversation had ended with him chasing after Lindsay. He looked uneasy. Embarrassed. At a loss. But in the end, he just masked it all with a sullen expression. "Regina, stop making a fuss. Let's go home and talk about it." I brushed off his hand as he reached for my suitcase. "I'm not making a fuss. I really do have things to handle at school. Owen didn't believe me. He just stood there, staring at me as I walked away. Once everything at school was sorted out, 3 or 4 days had already passed. Monica asked me, "Have you told Owen about going abroad?" Only then did I remember. I had completely forgotten about it again. Luckily, it wasn't too late to bring it up now. I went home, but Owen wasn't there. So I started packing up my things. Halfway through, Owen came back. When he saw me, he looked a little surprised, but then a relaxed smile appeared on his face. I was about to say something to him. But his expression quickly turned cold, and without a word, he walked into his study. Wait a minute. Was he sulking? I found it amusing. The next morning, I stopped Owen before he left for work. "I have something to tell you. Can you spare 20 minutes? Owen glanced at me, his lips pressing together slightly. "I have something to tell you too." He checked the time. "I'll pick you up after work tonight." "All right." So I waited until the evening again. By then, I had already packed up most of my things at home. While taking a break, I scrolled through Instagram and came across a post from Lindsay. It was taken at a jewelry store. She had posted a picture of a diamond ring on her hand. So sparkly, I love it. Not only had my mom liked the post, Owen had liked it too. I liked it as well. That evening, Owen came back. "Let's go out for dinner." "All right. Wear the dress I gave you for your birthday last time. It looks great on you." Did it really need to be this ceremonial? I was a little puzzled. But then I thought, after dating Owen for so many years, at least we should have a proper breakup. Okay. I changed into the dress. As I looked in the mirror, I unintentionally caught Owen's reflection behind me. His eyes were warm and full of affection. Maybe the closet lighting was just too bright, making his eyes shimmer. "You look beautiful," Owen said. He wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, his head lowering as he whispered near my neck. How should I put it? Something about Owen felt off today. There was still time. Owen didn't take me straight to the restaurant. Instead, he brought me to the university. "Do you remember? We reunited right there." Owen pointed at a cherry blossom tree along the campus pathway. It wasn't cherry blossom season, but the tree was still lush with leaves. He was talking about our first meeting in college after the national entrance exams. Back then, he had asked, "Why are you here alone?" I was too embarrassed to tell him that my parents had gone to accompany Lindsay for her retake exams. Later, Owen helped me carry my luggage to the dormitory. To thank him, I treated him to a meal. We weren't in the same major. Our departments were at opposite ends of the campus. Yet, I always ran into him at mealtimes. No one could dislike Owen. He was outstanding, as gentle as a spring breeze, yet as pristine and unattainable as snow. But in my mind, Owen never belonged to me. So every encounter with him made me both happy and sad. Until Lindsay went abroad for her studies. That was when Owen came to me and asked, "Would you be my girlfriend?" For the first time, I allowed myself to follow my heart. Even though, in the end, it still ended in failure. I remember. And over there. Owen had a lot to say today. I was a little confused, but I patiently listened. After all, it was polite. But Owen walked me all over the campus and still hadn't finished what he wanted to say. Until we reached the entrance of my department. "I used to stand here waiting for you after class," he said. I thought he was going to continue reminiscing. But unexpectedly, he stopped there. After that, Owen finally took me to dinner. His mood had visibly improved. A violinist played beside our table. Separated by half a table, the flickering candlelight made his face and gaze appear impossibly tender. The moment I stepped into the restaurant, I realized something was off. Looking around, the decor exuded a luxurious and unmistakable sense of surprise. Sure enough. Midway through the violin performance, several waiters walked in, pushing a massive bouquet. Behind them followed some of Owen's friends. They all crowded in noisily, surrounding us. Party poppers went off, and colorful streamers rained down over my head. At some point, Owen had knelt before me on one knee. "Regina, marry me." I stared blankly at the unexpected scene before me. Everyone around us cheered. Seeing my lack of reaction, they joked. She's too stunned. Didn't see that coming, huh? Ha ha ha. Under their coaxing, Owen took my hand. Just as the ring was about to slip onto my finger, I pulled my hand away. A dead silence fell. Everyone froze, staring at me. What's going on? Has Regina always wanted to marry Owen? Yeah, what does this mean? Is she rejecting him? Owen's smile stiffened instantly. Regina. I finally snapped out of my daze. Now I understood why Owen had been acting strange today. So these past few days, he had been avoiding me because he was planning this proposal. And the thing he wanted to tell me was this. All this time, I had thought. I frowned. Stand up first. Also, ask them to leave, I need to talk to you. Owen was still caught off guard. His friends, on the other hand, quickly sensed the shift in atmosphere. They exchanged glances before awkwardly shuffling away. As the lively scene dispersed, all that remained was an eerie emptiness. I must have hurt him just now. At this moment, Owen looked at me with a mixture of helplessness and unease. I applied for a study abroad program at the academy. I finally found the chance to tell him. Owen was momentarily confused. When? Half a month ago. That day I went to your office, I was going to tell you, but you were away on a business trip. For how long? 3 years. After I answered, Owen let out a sigh of relief. You're rejecting my proposal because of this, aren't you? Not exactly. Owen muttered to himself. 3 years isn't that long. Even if it's long distance, I can. I don't want a long distance relationship. I cut him off. A flicker of shock crossed his face. I looked him straight in the eye, my gaze serious and unwavering. We're breaking up. This wasn't a sudden decision. Ever since our engagement was brought up, unexpected obstacles had kept appearing. When something is within reach but suddenly disappears, it means it was never meant to be yours. Like a parent's love. Like Owen's favoritism. Now, at last, I saw things clearly. When I received Lindsay's call, I was moving the last box of my belongings out of Owen's house. Mom wants you to come home for dinner. Oh, and don't forget to bring Owen. Lindsay said and hung up before I could respond. When I arrived home, I rang the doorbell. The door swung open to reveal Lindsay's bright, cheerful face. Owen. Seeing that I was alone, her smile abruptly froze. Why are you by yourself? Where's Owen? He's not coming. Lindsay pouted, rolled her eyes at me, and turned to walk inside, calling out loudly. Regina's back. Mom was sitting in the living room. Hearing Lindsay's announcement, she looked up and, just like Lindsay, asked the same question. This time, Lindsay answered for me. Owen's not here. A flicker of disappointment crossed my mother's face. I was the one who belonged to this family, yet my presence was never as welcome as Owen's. At the dinner table, I sat alone on one side while Lindsay and Mom chatted and laughed together. The entire dining room echoed with their cheerful voices. Oh, right, Regina, I left a bunch of my photos at Owen's place. When you have time, could you ask him to return them to me? Lindsay suddenly turned to me, her eyes gleaming mischievously under the warm light. Ask him yourself, I replied. Mom shot me a glance. It's just a small thing. You can just tell him. I can't. Under Mom's disapproving glare, I added indifferently. Owen and I broke up. If not for the need to inform them, I wouldn't have come home today at all. The room fell silent. A flicker of satisfaction flashed in Lindsay's eyes, while Mom looked visibly awkward, as if unsure how to react. After a moment, she finally asked, in an unnaturally forced tone. Why did you break up? There was no trace of regret in her voice, only insincerity. A wave of nausea rose in my chest. I met her gaze coldly. Isn't this what you wanted? If I didn't break up with him, how else would you have let Lindsay take my place? My mother's face turned pale, then flushed red. She never expected her once obedient daughter to throw such sharp words at her. As if her authority had been challenged, she snapped. What are you talking about? What do you mean, I wanted this? That night, my mother and I had the biggest argument in over 20 years. For the first time, she made no effort to hide her utter disdain and disappointment in me. You were never as considerate as your sister. If it weren't for me raising you, do you think you'd have the life you do now? People who are closest to you always know exactly where to stab to make it hurt the most. Breaking up? It must have been your fault. Owen is such a great guy, what more could you possibly want? You can't even keep your own boyfriend? It's bad enough that you're not as good as your sister and everything else. I had expected this. But when that fragile illusion of a harmonious family finally shattered, what lay beneath was nothing but pure ugliness. I tried my best to suppress the pain welling up inside me, but my eyes still burned with unshed tears. You're right. I'll never be as good as Lindsay. So starting today, I won't be coming back anymore. Just pretend you never had me as a daughter. I forced down my sorrow and spoke calmly. Mom froze. When she saw me stand up to leave, her voice turned panicked. Where are you going? I was leaving the country. And if all went well, I wouldn't be coming back even after my studies ended. I still remembered the day Lindsay returned from her years abroad. She cried in my parents' arms, and they tearfully told her. You've been gone for 5 years. Your dad and I were so lonely without you. Lonely? Yet every holiday, every special occasion, I was always home. What was my presence worth? Lindsay only had to make a single phone call, and they'd shower her with praise for being thoughtful. The color drained from my mother's face. She stammered. These are just little things. I can't believe you still remember them. Little things? More than 20 years, over 8,000 days and nights of accumulated little things. Were they still just little things? I never understood why I was never enough for my parents. I was their firstborn, yet I always felt like I had been born just to accommodate Lindsay. They believed Lindsay deserved the best in the world. They indulged her, tolerated her, gave her everything she wanted. Even the dance classes I excelled in. They were originally meant for Lindsay, but she lost interest and passed them on to me. I had spent years perfecting my craft. I was the top dance student in my academy. But they had never once attended a single performance. I was their daughter, too. They knew how to love Lindsay. Why didn't they know how to love me? Some things shouldn't be thought about too much. The more I thought, the more it hurt. I didn't realize when, but my tears had already started falling. But I had said everything I needed to say. And from now on, I would never say them again. I picked up my things, ready to leave. Mom tried to call my name but couldn't. Lindsay comforted her. Regina is just selfish, you know that. Don't be sad. You still have me. Hearing that, I stopped in my tracks. Then, I turned back. I walked up to Lindsay. She lifted her gaze to meet mine. I raised my hand. 2 crisp slaps echoed in the room. Lindsay clutched her face in shock. You're crazy. Lindsay, if you don't know the meaning of integrity, I don't mind teaching you. Seduce your sister's boyfriend? That's shameless. Repeatedly taking things from me? That's disrespectful. Lindsay tried to argue, but I cut her off. I've saved everything you posted online. If you want to deny it, I don't mind compiling it into a nice little PDF and letting the whole world judge. Her face turned red, then white. She glared at me but dared not speak. I didn't always hate Lindsay. She used to be a sweet little girl who would run to me, calling my name and asking for hugs. When did she change? I didn't know. News of my breakup with Owen spread quickly. His friends came to talk me out of it. I shut them down with a single sentence. If you think this is nothing, I'll just send our chat records to your girlfriends. They immediately fell silent. See? People only care when the knife is pointed at them. 2 days later, it was time for me to leave. Monica came to see me off, eyes red with reluctance. But she never once tried to stop me. Take care of yourself over there, she said. And don't forget me. I won't, I promised. Out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a black car parked by the roadside. The license plate was familiar. Monica noticed it too. Her hostility toward Owen was palpable. When he stepped out of the car and walked toward me, she rolled her eyes. Owen stopped in front of me. In just a few days, he had become haggard. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his gaze had lost its usual clarity. Owen asked me what time my flight was. 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll take you. No need, the academy has arranged a bus. Owen blinked, his eyes trembling. Regina. I'm sorry. After thinking for a long time, he finally whispered those words, his voice shaky. And this sentence, he had already said countless times over the past few days. That night, Owen wondered why I brought up breaking up. He speculated many reasons. Is it because of the wedding planning? Or because I took Lindsay on a business trip? He asked cautiously. Seeing my silence, he quickly added in a panic. If it's because of those things, I promise it won't happen again. I gazed at him, and eventually, I asked the question I had been wanting to ask. Owen, I've always wanted to ask, did you get together with me because of Lindsay? Otherwise, it was impossible to explain. Why, after Lindsay returned to the country, would Owen be so indulgent in caring for her? Owen's face turned pale in an instant. He hesitated, unable to say a word. But I had already received my answer from his reaction. I told him, this is the reason I broke up with you. When I was young, I was Lindsay's subordinate. But as I grew older, I became her substitute. Am I such a worthless person? I'm sorry, but... That day, Owen also said sorry. But all his other explanations were drowned out by the slap I gave him. This is what you owe me. In this relationship, I had always been open and honest. It was him who let me down. After going abroad, my academic journey went smoothly. Though at first, the language barrier was an issue. But my companions were all friendly and kind. I changed all my contact information in China. Only Monica's was kept. In the first year abroad, I still heard about Owen from Monica. She said Owen was constantly proposing to me on social media. Netizens had no idea who Missa was referring to. They thought it was some rich person showing off their love. And some misguided netizens sent their blessings. Monica expressed her disdain and condemnation of Owen's actions. Later, a mysterious insider revealed the whole story behind Owen's behavior. Unexpectedly, modern netizens were quite clear-headed. What's going on? Thought it was a romantic drama, turns out it's just a scumbag regretting. Please spare her, isn't this just what he deserves? Exactly, why should she forgive him just because he regrets it? Some netizens even dug up information about Lindsay. To this day, my mom is still trying to get Lindsay and Owen together. Seeing the anger of netizens turn toward Lindsay, my mom simply created an account. She shifted all the blame onto me. If Lindsay hadn't gone abroad, Owen would have been her boyfriend. It was Regina who stole him from her. Regina is selfish, disrespectful to her parents, and has always taken her sister's things since childhood. I'm not sure if these were really my mom's posts. But netizens aren't stupid. Children's conflicts are mostly caused by parental favoritism. What kind of parents would slander their own child? Exactly, you don't deserve to be a mother. When Monica told me these things, it was often months after they had happened. What I was hearing was all from the past. The last time Monica mentioned their situation was in early December. Did you know that Owen and your sister were in a car accident? What? From Monica's recounting, I finally learned the truth. It turned out that the things my mom posted online had poured fuel on the fire. The anger of netizens grew even stronger. Lindsay's family was targeted by online harassment, and they didn't dare to leave the house. Lindsay originally wanted to ask Owen for help. But Owen refused. They were driving when they got into an argument. The car flipped off an overpass. One died, one was injured. Lindsay died, Owen broke a leg. After hearing that, I couldn't calm down for a long time. 3 months later, I received a call from home. It's Mom. Can you come back to visit me? Her voice was old and pleading. I was silent for a moment. I'm not coming back. When you're old, I'll send you support money. I heard the painful sobs from the other side of the line. I hung up the phone without a word. End of the story.